I'm Jas Schembri-Stothart, and I'm delighted to be hosting this evening's event, which is all about single parenting your teen, giving you tools for confidence and connection. I am one of the co-founders of Luna, which is a digital health and well-being app for teenagers, but also a co-pilot for parents throughout adolescence too. And I am delighted to be joined by two incredible guests who I will hand over for short introductions to. So Eve Stanway, divorce and breakup coach, and then Nevine Coutry, founder and CEO of Playdate. So Eve, would love it if you could please give us a quick intro to you, and then I will hand over to the wonderful Nevine for an intro to her.
Hello, everyone. So thank you for that introduction, Jas. I am a breakup and divorce coach, and what that means is I support people really when their marriages or relationships have hit the rocks, and often to save the relationship, sometimes to help it end gracefully, but with particular emphasis on supporting parents to support their children when things like that are going on.
Fantastic. Thank you, Eve. Over to Nevine.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Jas, for the introduction. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Nevine, and I'm the founder and CEO of Playdate, which is the world's first dating app for single parents. I'm a single parent myself and really created the business out of lack of options and frustrations with mainstream dating apps. Life doesn't end at divorce or separation or being widowed, and I think all single parents should try and find joy and loving relationships, because relationships are the most important thing in anyone's life and affects all areas of our lives. So yeah, I really believe in the quality of our relationships affects us tremendously, especially as parents. And that's why I'm here today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. We've got a really, really exciting session, and I'm not just saying it because I am the co-host of this. We had a really insightful pre-meet last week. And so the way the session will run is we'll have some time up front to share some of the insights we gathered on our app, Luna, from the teen perspective, things that they're thinking about, questions they have when it comes to single parenting and divorce. And alongside this, we'll bring in Eve to the conversation to offer some real practical tips on how to have meaningful conversations. And then we've also left a lot of time for the end for Q&A. And here you can ask questions to any of us on the panel. So please feel free to use that Q&A feature in the chat. We will be monitoring it throughout, and then we've got a session and time at the end to answer all of them. But before we go into some of these insights, we did want to give you a quick overview of the two companies bringing you this webinar and to give you a flavour of how we've sourced our insights. So over to Nevine for a short overview on Playdate.
Thank you, Jas. So as I mentioned, Playdate is the world's first dating app for single parents, and it was really created for personal, selfish reasons, really. I found it very difficult to meet people, and I think we don't enjoy ourselves enough as single parents. We have so much on our plates, and I really wanted to give single parents a platform where they can find meaningful relationships, where they can find their next life partner. And really, it isn't all about the kids. And I think they always say, wear your oxygen mask first before you put it on your children. And I think as it's very true that happy parents means happy kids. So our slogan is, who said Playdates were only for kids? And it's a playful, lovely, playful, safe platform for all single parents to find love and meaning. Next, please. Thank you. So just a few stats. So there's 3 million single parents in the UK who would love to find a new relationship. Sadly, there's a 40% divorce rate average, and half of those people that are getting divorced have children, you know, in their teenage years or younger. And mainstream dating apps just do not offer that kind of level of convenience support to single parents. Sadly, we're met with people like John here on Tinder or Bumble who would say things on their profile like, no single mums, if you were a catch, he wouldn't have left you and the kids behind. And this is actually a profile of an actual person on these mainstream dating apps. So we're very massively disadvantaged on these mainstream dating apps. And that's why we wanted to kind of level the playing field and give single parents a platform where they're celebrated because they are parents, and they're found attractive because they have kids. Next, please. The app works very differently to what mainstream dating apps. So we don't use swipe technology. It's all about your lifestyle as a single parent, when you're available for dates. We have a planning feature on the app, so you can say which days you don't have the kids or do have the kids, whether it's mornings, afternoons, or evenings. We also have a babysitting plugin. So we have a partnership with with Bubble, which is the UK's leading childcare and nanny app. And they offer all of our users a discount. So not having a sitter can never be an excuse for not going on that date. As you can see, some people choose to put pictures of themselves with their children. It's a very safe, inclusive space. We're open to men looking for men, women looking for women. We're inclusive to all kinds of sexual orientation and backgrounds. And the onboarding of the app is very much around your life and your values as a parent. So it's not about the color of your eyes or how tall you are or what university you went to. It's really about, are you open to having more children? When do you have the kids? How old are your children? What's your parenting style and what your relationship goals are? And also what type of single parent you are. So for example, we have a large proportion of single parents that are widows. And we've seen that they tend to like to match with fellow widows because there's that shared experience, which really helps foster connection. Another one of our features, for example, is our invisibility feature, which means that you can make yourself invisible to an ex-partner, which for me is very useful because I don't want my ex-husband knowing what I'm doing on the dating apps or to see my profile at all. So that is quite a useful feature for single parents. So it's very much tailored specifically to the single parent lifestyle. And it's really, the goal is to make it accessible and hassle-free and really make dating a joyful experience.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Nevine. And Nevine built an app for the parent side, and we have built an app with Luna for teenagers. So we are a holistic health and well-being platform for teenagers, and we talk about everything from relationships and friendships with parents, but also other things they worry about throughout adolescence. So first periods, mental health, skin, and so much more. We all remember how tough those teen days could be or are, and it's made even worse in this heightened age of digital everything. So we have built Luna, which is a platform where they can learn about all these topics through content created by experts. They can ask anonymous questions and get an expert-backed response. They can start tracking their moods and their emotions and understand their habits. And they can take quizzes to solidify all of their learning. And we created Luna because, well, it was just an app which I wish existed when I was younger. And whilst I had a very open relationship with my mum, there were at times just some things I didn't want to ask her, or I just wanted to get some guidance from another trusted source. So we couldn't believe that there wasn't a dedicated platform for teenagers to do just this. And the insights we will be talking about later in this webinar do come directly from our platform, from real teenagers. So Luna is not another social media platform. Teenagers cannot interact with each other. They can only interact with Luna. They cannot give each other advice. And where we can't help a teenager, we do signpost them and recommend them to seek help when it's needed. And Luna is co-created with medical experts, psychologists, and so much more. We have over 700 pieces of content on our platform, and the most popular topics that teens are engaging with are often around relationships, family life, mental health, confidence, and motivation. And that's why we're so excited to be doing this webinar. But most of all, and I think the thing that we are most proud of is the amazing reviews we have, both from parents and teenagers. Teens genuinely get a lot of benefit from this app, and I would urge you to search We Are Luna on the App Store and read them firsthand yourself. I think it's very difficult to build a product for a teen when you're not one, so we feel very proudly that we've been able to build a product that teens love and that parents trust. And we're now also building advice and insights for parents too, seeing as we have so much of that. So we asked our teen community, where are you going when it comes to support around your mental health and well-being? And we were very pleased to see over 22% going to parents, a handful going to doctors and to schools. But we were less pleased to see 56% going to friends, going to social media, or going to Dr. Google for advice, validation, and support. And so we took this one step further and we said, well, why are you going to these spaces for advice? And they told us it's anonymous. Sometimes there's a fear of being judged when you talk to people around you who know. The second is they get a lot of comfort in knowing that they're not the only ones thinking it. The third is that sometimes they feel unsure how to speak up to parents and have these conversations, and so they'll go to social media for support in how to do that. And then lastly, what we heard was sometimes they just want some objective advice and not their parents, who obviously love them and think the world of them. They just want some real advice. And so we've taken what we've heard when speaking to teenagers and built some of their needs into our platform with a feature called Ask Luna. And here, this is where they can ask an anonymous question and get an expert verified response. So we've had over 44,000 questions asked to Luna to date. And we'd now like to share some of the themes relating to single parenting and family relationships with you. So this is all anonymous, and we've been able to group them into themes. And I'd now like to invite Eve and Nevine to join me into the next part of the conversation. So when looking at all of the cluster of questions that we've had in, the first core theme we had was around explaining divorce and separation to children. And within this main theme, there were 3 sub-themes. So we often get questions around, how do I help my parents who are sharing things with me about their relationship or their divorce, and I'm not really sure what to say or to do or how to help them. So there's definitely a theme around how much should you say and should you be sharing more over time. The second theme of questions that we're getting quite a lot about is really around worries about separation and hearing arguments at home. This is sometimes really weighing on their mind, and we're getting some questions in about, well, what do I do about this? And then lastly, actually, teens asking Luna for additional support and resources and who they should be speaking to above and beyond their parents. And obviously there are other options like school, the safeguarding lead, charities like Childline, but this is also another cluster of questions we get into. So lots to dig into here, and obviously not lots and lots of time. So Eve, I'd like to ask you a couple of questions, but the first one really being, what are your thoughts on conversations with our children? At what age should we be talking about these things, and how often should we be having these conversations?
Thank you, Jas. And it's so interesting looking at the resources that you've both put in place that are really practical, logistic, helpful, but carefully thought out resources. It's really nice to see that. It's so important. In an age where social media feels like it's a bit scattergunned, it's wonderful that you put so much care and attention into it. So this is one of the most common things that I talk to parents about going through divorce and separation, how to tell the children how much to talk about, how to have these conversations. And one of the hardest things about having a difficult conversation is we have to deal with both our own emotions and the emotion of the person that we're speaking with. The guidance that I often offer to parents is to think about their own experience, but not thinking about their experience now as an adult going through and a parent going through divorce and breakup or arguments, but as it was like as a child. Children struggle sometimes. They don't have a perspective. They may not have hope. They only know the life that they're leading. As adults, we've got a much broader range of experience, and we know that you get through difficult times, but of course, children don't necessarily know that for sure. And child brain development, no matter how clever a child is, the brains are not fully equipped actually to deal with some of the kind of big concepts that we have to deal with. So my advice to parents is understand that we're going long with these things. We're having a long conversation with lots and lots and lots of pauses in it. So we will have a little conversation based on where the child is at and the child's needs and what we think the child is looking for. Then we will say to the child, we're going to have a little conversation about this, but it's not just one conversation. These are going to be things, this is stuff to do with your life. We're going to be talking about when you're 10, and when you're 12, and when you're 14, and when you're 16, and when you're 18. We'll be talking about it when you have your first crush. We might be talking about it when you have your first serious relationship. We might be talking about it when you get engaged, or if you choose to get married. So if we frame the conversation from the very start as being a long conversation with lots of pauses, then we don't have to get all the information in all in one go. And in terms, and I do just want, you said about helping parents who are sharing too much information. We really have to understand that when we are sharing information with a child, even a young adult, or when we're asking them for help and advice, for emotional support, they are children. They don't have the capacity to offer emotional support. They don't have the capacity really to offer advice. It's our job. I always think parenting is like an umbrella, and the rain falls down and the umbrella is there to protect the child. Umbrellas don't work very well if we hold them the other way up. And so, yeah, I don't know if does that answer your question, Jas?
Yeah, no, it really does. And I think that umbrella analogy is a really nice way of visualizing it and tying it all together. So I think there's definitely a lot of food for thought there. I guess just moving on to the second theme within this, what can parents do to, I guess, reassure their children around maybe the realities of what's going on in the household, or even practical considerations for those who might be working through a divorce and experiencing some changes in the family home too? Are there any sort of practical tips you've got there?
Definitely. I think as parents, we all want to protect our children. So what we can do is really try and sell the idea to the child. You know, it's going to be amazing. You're going to have 2 Christmases. You'll have 2 bedrooms. You'll get 2 of everything. But sometimes what we are failing to, and we can't sugarcoat, is the fact they'll have to pick up all their stuff and pack and sleep in a different bed and then move backwards and forwards. So my recommendation actually to parents is to acknowledge fully and completely that due to the parents being unable to resolve the difficulties in their relationship, this is going to create some really uncomfortable change for both of the adults and for the children. And that as their parent, you will understand that it's difficult, that it's not their fault, that it will become complex over time, but that you value their efforts in having to adapt to this new circumstance and this new situation. Imagine if you were moving abroad with your children, you would talk about it, but you'd recognize it would be a difficult period of adjustment. I think because we don't want to think of how uncomfortable it is for the children, we don't acknowledge to them just how amazingly they are dealing with a whole new structured way of living. So that was my real recommendation, is not try and sugarcoat it. Don't try and imply it's going to be okay, because it's not. Recognize that we as parents are imposing these difficulties and changes on our children, and then really stand by them and let them complain. Let them complain, let them be angry, let them be annoyed, and then say, in life, there will be loads and loads and loads of incredibly tough things happening. And as a family, we'll work to get through them together. Yeah. Because I think it's better if we acknowledge the fact that life is tough and that we have to make uncomfortable choices than to try and make it too smooth, because it is difficult for kids. So really that's my main advice, is acknowledge how hard it is and how much you really appreciate your kids' support with these changes.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned something quite interesting there around it being very uncomfortable at times for children. What would you suggest to those looking to give their children additional support outside the family? Do you have any go-to suggestions there, or any thoughts on how parents can make sure that their children are feeling most supported too?
So that there are things like this doesn't work for everyone, but there are things like starting a journal Imagine it's like a complaints box, but it's more of a journal, and it's a dual journal between parents and children. So the parents can write down things that they're feeling, and bearing in mind that we're talking to children. If you are not sure the level at which you should be sharing with your children, ask yourself, if my neighbor was telling this stuff to my child, would I be comfortable, or would I be having a word with my neighbor for saying these things to my kid? Yeah. And then if you starting a journal so children can fairly and freely and frankly write down how they're experiencing things, and you can write down how you're experiencing things, so there's an opportunity to chat. Another way is starting a complaints box where children can write down their complaints, and as an adult you're willing to take a complaint out, acknowledge it, allow the child to say what is happening, so that you can then discuss it, because it's okay to complain. We still have to do what we have to do. I think recognizing that no matter how right or wrong we feel our ex is behaving, it is our job to act as well as we can and do the right thing all of the time, because no matter what we think we're doing when we're arguing with our ex, we're arguing with our children's other parent, and that's always going to be compromising for a child, because children love both parents. And I think recognizing that even if you don't like someone else's behavior, you will always do the right thing, that again, that really helps children, and it helps lower their resentment towards us. Finally, you get children who behave really well with one parent and really badly with the other parent. It's very, very important not to presume that if the child is behaving really well with one parent, that means that they're having a great time. Sometimes children in particular, behave better with the person that they are more anxious about upsetting and disappointing than they do with the parent who they know is 100% got their back, and so therefore won't, they can safely decompress with. And then the final thing I would say is understand that when children move from one parent to the other parent, in my view, they need between half an hour to an hour of complete decompression from that transition, much like we do when we finish work. We need some time to decompress before we can be in that environment. And I see some children, and they're in one environment and then they're immediately in the other environment, and they don't have time for their nervous system to settle and relax. So even if that means when you pick your child up, stopping for an ice cream on the way home, or doing something to just break the transition between those two environments. And that's especially important if the child has been one environment, then school, then to the new environment. It's a lot of change for a little person to deal with. So flowing with that and understanding it and acknowledging it can make all the difference, in my view.
Yeah, some really practical tips in there, Eve. I really like the idea of the complaint box and the dual journal. I think they're definitely tools that parents will be able to do together.
I just want to add, sorry to interrupt. I just want to add one thing. If, however, your child is just using you as a complaints box and endlessly complaining, it's also really important to kind of hush that down and say, feedback is positive. I like feedback. But if you were in a situation where you were literally being complained at all the time by your child, I would, if you speak to me, I'll give you some different strategies for dealing with that. Because although children must be allowed to complain and grumble, that is not an excuse for them, not letting it get too far. Sorry to interrupt, but it's important to say that.
Not at all. I'm very conscious of time and so much to get through. I don't know, Nevine, if you want to add anything to that, or should I move through to the next?
No, I think Eve really gave all the tips. So yeah, please feel free to move on.
Okay, awesome. So moving into the next theme, and I'm sure there's going to be even more tips from Eve on this. So this one is around introducing new partners to children. So we've had some questions coming in from teenagers asking around whether their parents might have new partners. Perhaps they've seen something on a phone that's triggered that thought, or someone has said something to them. So you know, I have some questions to Eve and shortly around, you know, when is the right time to introduce a new partner? What are the risks around leaving it too late? You know, what are the kind of things we should be doing when assessing that situation? Second theme around moving a new partner in, you know, how to calm teenagers who are thinking that, well, who are struggling with that thought of getting a new person moving into their home with them. And then lastly, a theme that's actually come from teenagers around, I like my parents' partner, but I don't feel I have much in common with them, or I don't feel like I can bond with them. So how can I, as a teen, form a connection with another adult, which is such a mature way of thinking. So lots to pick off there. So Eve, maybe the first question is, you know, when is the right time to announce that you have a new partner? Appreciate different people have different timelines, but how do you manage this? What are your thoughts? And Nevine, please do feel free to chip in if you have anything to add as well.
So this can be really tricky. And I think it does have to be individual and situation dependent. Okay. Because sometimes people have a new partner, but it's somebody that you've known for a long time. So the new partner may be a new partnership, but that person may be known to the child already. So there's a lot of caveats on this. But broadly speaking, I would roughly say you need to, I would say in a relationship, you need to have been through a couple of seasons of the relationship. When we are starting a relationship with a new partner, you know, there's all the lovely stuff at the beginning in the first month or so. But what we also want to know about that person is how they handle stress, how they handle life's challenges, how they handle difficulties, knowing what their attitudes are to like money and discipline and education, or even politics or religion, or whatever the things are. So taking time to know somebody enough to know these broad things and whether they're in line with your own values and your own outlook is really, really important. Because if you have a partner who isn't in line with your own values and outlook, and you introduce them into your children, it's going to feel a little bit confusing. And remember, our behavior as adults, we are modeling and teaching our children how they might go about developing their own relationships. So I think if you are a single parent dating, I think it's more important to have those conversations with any potential new partner to find out whether there is compatibility, because it's a very, very big thing introducing a new partner to children, and children can fall in love. I've had this with a number of cases where the kid really falls in love with a new partner, or the new partner's got a dog and they really fall in love with the new partner's dog or the new partner's kids or stuff like that. And then if the relationship breaks up, the child goes through another loss. So I think you just have to work harder dating as a single parent. That's a very big thing. In terms of kind of moving in, again, you know, it's always worth asking, are we moving in together for good reasons? Would it be okay to have a non-traditional relationship and live separately but stay together for a longer period of time so children can adapt and get used to it? Remember, you've also potentially got another parent, or maybe even another two parents to consider. So there's a lot of things for this child to deal with, because it's moving in a new partner changes a myriad of relationships for that child, and they need a lot of support with all of those adaptations. In terms of not having anything common with a new partner, you know, if if you met somebody and they're absolutely wonderful and you're super committed to them and you really think you are going to make a go of it and make these next steps, it is important to do icebreakers. It's important to go away. You know, think about how teams, like at work related, how we do team building. There's nothing like going through challenges. And I think we'll have to go and do things with the new partner and see how that fits in. And actually not leave the child, who may feel socially awkward, who may feel compromised, to have to do all that work on their own. And mainly give them time. Like, and if a youngster was asking me about getting to know a new partner, I would say don't put any pressure on yourself. It is the adult's responsibility to come to you. It is an adult. As adults, we know how to have conversations. We know how to align ourselves with the interest of a child. And I would be always very, very concerned if a child was having to work out how to align their interests with an adult, because an adult is the one responsible for helping nurture that relationship, because they hold all the power, they hold all the cards, and they have the experience. So whilst I commend a youngster saying, I'd like to get to know them better, really that youngster should be talking to their mum or dad and saying, I would like to get to know your partner better. Can you ask them to work a bit harder to get to know me better? Okay, not the other way around.
And
No.
actually, Eve, I just want to jump in and maybe ask another
Mm.
question, just in
Yeah, of
relation
course.
to moving in a new partner. Do you think children should be consulted prior to that decision? Is that something that they should be
Yeah.
part of, or is it kind of this person's moving in?
I think children should be. I think that consultation's a really good word, Nevine. When we consult somebody, we seek their views, we seek their input, we seek their opinions, and we may also ask them if there's some things they'd like us to consider. So a consultation is very good. I think arbitrarily moving an adult that the child does not know or doesn't feel comfortable, and their children, into the child's home, is what we're doing is we're teaching the kid that we don't know how to handle these difficult things. And in the end, our first responsibility, we hold all the power in the parent-child relationship. As parents, we hold the power. We hold the economic power, the emotional, the social power, the logistic power. So if we impose a solution onto children, now, that being said, sometimes we do have to impose. We have to say, I'm sorry, we're moving to another part of the country. I'm sorry, we're going to get divorced or break up. So we do have to impose these things on, but imposing a new partner, and we have to be very, very careful. If we've got people have different attitudes to nakedness, different attitudes to locking bathroom doors, different attitude to the favorite food, different attitudes to, where people are positioned around the table or what television programs that we watch. So I think taking all of that into consideration is really important, and it's the adult's responsibility to develop a relationship with the kid and also give that kid time. I really think. And remember as well, if we respect somebody's right to say, no, I don't want it, and we're willing to pause a little bit, that is the best way to get somebody ultimately to say yes. But if we don't respect their no, I'm not ready for this yet, then we make it harder for them to come to a, do you know, actually, yes, I am. So, time. Does that answer your question?
Yes, perfect. Thanks.
Yeah. Such a
Thank you.
delicate subject.
Such a delicate subject, and so many
Mm.
considerations, I think, like practical considerations, like you said, around who sits where at the dinner table. We all know we have our favorite spot and shows that we like to watch. So yeah, I think really good food for
Yeah.
thought there. I would just quickly say thank you to everyone who has sent a question in. Please do feel free to enter more questions into the question box. We will be getting to these shortly, so please don't feel shy to do this. So the last theme we have is actually around how you get your child to open up about their feelings. So we've had some questions in from teenagers expressing worries about what's been going on. So I'd love to ask Eve about some of the signs that we might need to look out for, and how we then might encourage a child to speak up. We've had questions around, I actually have some feedback on my my parents' partner. How do I turn this into a productive conversation? Because I love my mum, but I don't want to upset her. And then you know, just lastly, making sure we give teens or children the space to open up as well. So, you know, how do we do that? So I guess like first question, if a teen isn't opening up and doesn't feel like they're able to, what are some of those signs that parents should be looking out for? And I guess then second to that, what tips would you give to a parent looking to maybe trying to open that conversation up?
Okay, so I think we all have had the experience of people asking us questions and saying, how are you feeling about that? Are you feeling good about this? And we can feel very put on the spot because the reality is we don't know. We just don't know how we feel about something. And I think that when we understand that we don't always know how we feel about stuff, and again, we've got adult experience, we've got adult length of time on the planet, children don't. So feeling under pressure is awful. You know, for most of us, if you put us under enough pressure, we just can't think what to say. And if you're a teenager and you're under a lot of pressure and you can't think what to say, the what you're going to do is shut down or lash out or retreat. That's what you're going to do. Nothing else. So if in order to get children to and youngsters to talk about their worries, the very first thing I would say is we have to be prepared to hear whatever they say. And that means hearing stuff that we might find uncomfortable. And we have to be able to stop, breathe, take it in, note it down, and then ask more questions. Our desire will be to want to defend and shut it down. You can't help it, right? Just can't help it. No, everything's going to be fine. It won't happen. It'll be fine, we want to say. But what we have to do is say, wow, so you're worried about my new partner moving in. Tell me more. Tell me more. If you want somebody to talk about how they're feeling, when they start talking, our next question is, and then? And then how are you feeling? And then what did you think? And then what have you been? So what you do is that you keep asking really gently so that they know that it's an ongoing. And then you say, I can see that you're not sure at the moment, and that's fine. Maybe we can talk about this again later because I'd love to hear what you have to say. Because remember, lots of the time when we're talking, we're working out what we're saying anyway. We don't know what we're saying until we've said it. And kids really are like that. So if you talk to kids, which I know you do, Jas, I'm sure that a lot of the time parents say, tell me about how you're feeling. And the kid says, well, I'm feeling this. Oh, well, you know, blah, 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 blah. Instead of saying, oh, okay, well, tell me a little bit more. Well, what have you noticed? Who have you spoken to? What did they say? What did your mate say? What did your best mate say that you should do? Yeah. I'm trying to think back what I did when I was your age and this, that, and the other happened. Yeah. So can you see how we can make them feel safe by actually making them feel, encouraging them to do it more? I think that attitude then means that, you know, I've got a new partner, I'm going to be moving, you know, I'm going to be moving things forward with my new partner, really, really like them. At any point that you want, you can say to your kid, if you've got stuff to tell me or stuff to feedback or what you can see, because I really value your opinion. Like I had one situation, it was with an older, she came to me because she said, I'm really concerned. She was 17 and she rang me up and she said, I'm really concerned because I can see my mum is really different with her new partner and it worries me. I can see that she's changing the way she's dressing. I can see that she's not voicing opinions. She's stopped wearing makeup. This was what the 17-year-old was saying because the 17-year-old had an understanding that those were flags and was seeing them in her mum and didn't know who to talk about it to, but knew she couldn't talk to her mum about it because her mum would then defend the new partner, and that was probably something toxic going on there. That was a tricky one, but we got to the bottom of that, because I found a way, and I got I got into that. I managed to get it all out. So I think the key bit of advice I would give anybody is if you want your children to talk to you, you have to be fully prepared to hear whatever they say. And no matter how distressing it is, ask them more questions about it. And believe me, I've done this with my own children, and it's so difficult to get frank feedback from your kids, but it's really valuable for me. I've learned a lot.
And
Does
also,
that?
I just wanted to add to that, that I feel like as us parents, we always try to, any emotion or anything they say to us, we need to find a solution straight away.
Yeah.
And I think that probably stops them from sharing too much, because sometimes they just want to express themselves without us giving them a solution straight away. And I think it's okay.
Yeah.
We can't fix everything.
I think,
And I'm guilty of
yeah.
it. So.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's even more than that. I think when we want, loads of parents say to me, "Oh, I just want my kids to be happy." And the sentence is really interesting. I just want my children to be happy. I just want them to be happy. I don't want them to be anything else. But what that does is it teaches the kids that all the other feelings are bad.
Yeah.
And if we teach them all the other feelings are bad, then, well, how are they going to then come and talk to us about all the other feelings if they know they're bad? Because they know that we just want them to be happy. We don't want them to be sad, guilty, angry, frustrated, disgusted, pissed off, and all of the other things that kids quite rightly are. And we are too. Like, let's be honest, sometimes. Often. So I just want you to be happy is something that I think we should all take a pen and paper and write an A4 sheet longhand to ourselves going, why am I so focused on happy? Because there's a whole load of other really important emotions out there. And I have to welcome all of those emotions if I want my child to talk to me. Because I remember being a teenager and I was unhappy a lot of the time. I didn't know whether the world was going to be okay. I didn't know whether I was going to achieve my dreams. I didn't know whether you know what I mean? Like, we're not
Definitely.
happy when we're teenagers because we don't know what's going to happen next, apart from the fact we're going to be adults. And it doesn't always look that good, does it?
And it's even more heightened today in this digital world with even more
Yeah.
exposure and unrealistic expectations put upon us
I
with other
agree.
people that we're seeing. So I think
I
you
think,
raised an amazing point
yeah,
there.
I think the other thing is that also, if you look at, I mean, I see this all the time. I go to networking and I get out and about. In society, I think that young people, like teenagers, are the kind of last bastion of people that we can be prejudiced against. And actually, youngsters have got loads of strength and wisdom. I've had so many parents go, I'm worried about my kids using social media. To be honest, the kids are worried about their mums using, dads using social media because the children know how to block. They know how to stay safe online, whereas you see endless adults who've got no idea how to do it. And children are talking to their friends on social media. That's where their social club is. That's where their youth hostel is, youth club is that we used to have. They have it there, and they've got ideas. They're dreamers and entrepreneurs and inspirers, and even the ones who we're sitting there worrying that they're not talking to anyone. They're talking to loads of people. So I think that kind of balancing that really helps, and recognizing that we might be scared, but our kids might just have stuff to say to us, you know?
Yeah. Well, definitely know from working with teens day in and day out for Luna, they're definitely not scared to have an opinion sometimes. And like you said, really do bring a lot to the table and will tell us if they like something or they don't like something, we'll have a better idea. So couldn't agree with you more there. I would like to move us on to questions, if that's okay.
Yeah.
We've had some great ones come through. Again, please do feel free to pop them in the chat and we will do our best to get through as many as possible. I'll kick off with the few that we have in here. So there's one which is around how much should you share about your thoughts on the other parent when your tween or teen starts asking about it? And how do you go about answering their questions as they get older or start to work things out themselves? So, for example, does my partner have anger issues or does my dad have anger issues?
So I've got answers for these things because these things do come up. So I think first of all, no matter how difficult or angry an ex is, or different, and I work within a very challenging, shall we say, environment in some of the breakups that we work with. But the reality is there are people like that in the world. So the way that I would always frame it is, I recognize, and the kid says, oh, that talking about this kind of level of toxicity, and being able to say there are people who behave in these ways in the world. You are going to come across them. At the moment, you are maybe coming across them, and it's your mum, or it's your dad, or it's a grandparent, or whoever it is. But there are people who behave in these ways out there in the world. You will find that you're working alongside them. You will find them on the school run. You will find them in all sorts of walks of life. You will find people whose behavior is challenging, who don't respect boundaries, who are emotionally overwhelming, use emotional blackmail, guilt grip, all of these different things. You will find people like that in the world. And it just so happens that this parent also has some of those behaviors. But we all also have some of those behaviors. Some people have them and they reflect and they try and correct those behaviors. Other people don't. So when we are talking about a very difficult other parent, it's really important to frame it that this is how some people behave, but what we don't do is try and please them. We understand that if they get very angry or upset, they won't explode. They've been angry and upset a lot in their lives, If it's uncomfortable for you and the child is old enough, you can make a decision to spend less time with that person, but you will still spend some time with them. And as you get closer and closer to adulthood, and you're both adults, your parent and you will have different strategies that you can employ to deal with them. But if a person is behaving really badly, if we can, and I know this is complex with childcare arrangements and stuff like that, and this is why a lot of the work I do with the divorce coaching is de-escalating conflict, de-escalating it. But if we frame it in terms of there are people like that out in the world, you'll get teachers like that, tutors like that, neighbors like that. It's just particularly difficult when it's a parent, but then you will learn how to pick your way around those things. But I think that's how you have to frame it. It's not, oh, your mum or your dad. It's there are people who behave like that. You're probably going to end up going out with somebody who's a bit like that. Leave them at some point, that is the only way that we can really talk about it. The other thing I would say is that if you've gone through a really, really, really complex thing, say to your child, it isn't appropriate for me to share the full details while you were a child. Okay? It's just not the right thing to do. I will tell you all that you need to know, and I will talk to you as much as you can. But when you are an adult, when you are over the age of 18, I will be very, very happy to sit down with you, and I will answer all of the questions in a calm and balanced way. But I will do it when you're 18, because it's not appropriate for me to share this stuff when you're a child.
Yeah, and I actually think that your last point is probably a great segue onto the next question, which is what do you do if you haven't really communicated well from the beginning about everything in general? I have an 18-year-old. What are your thoughts on this? What can I do now that they are 18?
Right. So again, you can be really honest. Remember, these children that we have these days are better informed and better educated as a result of social media and Dr. Google and all these apps and things like that. They are better educated than we are actually about toxic and difficult relationships a lot of the time. Think back to when we were young, right? Nobody was talking about this stuff when I was getting into toxic and difficult relationships. So what we can do is, if your child has got to 18, you can say, I would like to have a conversation and share some things with you. And then just say, I think looking back, or I've had some advice, and I think looking back, I probably did not share the information about what happened in the right way. So I would like to give you, my kid, the opportunity now, or at any point when you're ready. Okay, this is a lifelong guarantee, this one, where at any point, if you want to come and talk to me and ask me, I will share it. There's a lovely saying that says, as parents, we are the custodians of our children's history. And that means it's really important when our children hit 18 and above to say, I am here to share any and all information. Now that you are an adult, ask me questions and I will answer them honestly. Because it's never too late to have these conversations. You know, so many people either don't have it or they have it on deathbeds and stuff like that. Like, we need to let our children know that we are willing to share. It's like GDPR, isn't it? We are willing to share the data that we hold about you. We'll do it when you're 18 because then you're legally of age. But yeah, at that point we'll do it, you know, but we don't have a right to gatekeep this stuff. I think at the same time, we should understand that if we have suffered severe domestic abuse, or in fact, any domestic abuse, sharing it that very sensitively with children, because hearing and seeing and witnessing violence can be, you know, it's a difficult thing. And there are a lot of children, I think, who are carrying around unresolved complex PTSD from things they've experienced in their childhood. And even opening up that conversation starts the process of maybe talking it through and resolving those feelings.
That's really good advice. Thank you, Eve. I'm going to move on to another question, which is, we'd love to know Eve's advice for getting an angry teen to open up when they don't want to talk to you.
Okay.
Any thoughts on that?
So, if an angry teen, if a person is angry, people are angry often. It's a kind of secondary emotion in terms of people have been very frustrated or they feel very, very anxious. Angry teens struggle to open up for a number of different reasons. Part of the reason why they struggle is because they're so furiously angry that they're worried that they'll break the relationship with you as their parent if they let you know how they truly feel. You know, as adults, we learn that anger is okay, but for children, you know, when children are really, really angry, it means they're not sure that they love you anymore. And they can be very, very scared that if they tell you how angry they are with you, you might not love them anymore. And if you are the one safe parent they've got and they're really angry, can you see how dangerous it might be for them to share with you? Because if they say something and you decide you don't love them anymore, can you see what a risk it is? So sometimes when that angry child won't talk, it's because they're worried that they're going to jeopardize their relationship with you. And that's a big risk. And I think if somebody's feeling that angry, first of all, we can reassure them. Yeah, I have dealt with a heck of a lot in my life. I can definitely hear your anger. It's mine, especially if it's directed at me because I've upset you. Please tell me. I will listen. I will take it and I will pay attention. I will not defend myself. I will simply explain what happened. So, but I think what we have to understand is when kids won't talk to us, sometimes it's because they're scared they'll break the relationship with us. And then who will they have? Who will they have if they upset us so much that we don't ever want them anymore? And sometimes these children have experienced a parent who has rejected them, so they know it can happen. So I think if a child is really angry, we have to really reassure them, I am really happy to hear it, even though I know it'll be upsetting. And the second, I think also that they can definitely talk to other people, but actually even talking to other people can be really problematic. Because it's really unsafe for lots of people feel to share anger. So we just have to keep working at it and understand that it's a risk that we need to make easy for them.
And perhaps, Eve, like journaling could be a good thing for them when they're
journaling can be really good, and I do encourage journaling. I think people really worry with journaling that it'll get shared and get found out. And I encourage people when they are kids, especially when they're journaling, and then literally buy your child a shredder so they can journal and then shred what they've journaled. I'm a strong believer that generally speaking, we probably shouldn't read our journal pages because the journaling is designed to get it out. So if your kid really journaling, buy them a shredder so they can write it down and shred it so no one can read it. Because that's as good, that gets the anger out just as well, but without there being evidence.
It's interesting you say that, Eve, because we notice a lot of tweens and teens on Luna talking about vent accounts that they've started on social media.
Yeah.
They don't have you know, a picture behind it, or you don't
Yeah.
know who's behind the
Yeah.
account, but they just use it to vent
Mm,
their feelings and then
totally.
like, sort of delete posts or actually just see what other people are saying in
Yeah.
relation to it. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think that the idea of a
Yeah.
shredder completely makes sense with
Yeah.
what we're hearing and seeing firsthand on
Yeah.
Luna. I'd
Yeah.
love to try and squeeze in two final questions. We've had a couple in on this, and you talked about de-escalating and strategies and tips. But we've had a question around like, do you have any additional tips for trying to parent alongside a toxic ex, and how to talk about that with your teen? I know you touched on it before, but could you dive into like one of those strategies at all, or de-escalation tips? I think that would be really helpful.
Yeah. Okay. So I would say, right. So if you have a toxic ex, then what that means usually is that everything is a fight. Clearly, that's obvious, but it's a fight for good and bad. So you are never going to convince somebody who's choosing to be in conflict with you. Like, you never win that war by joining in the conflict. So the only thing that we can do is say, I don't agree with that. I think something different. So we never argue with what they say. We just say, I don't agree, and I think something different from the way your other parent sees this. And that is just the single line that you use. So your ex says, I think that, I don't think that I think you should feed all the children whatever you've made them and not allow them any variation, or whatever it is. I don't know. There's some of the ridiculous arguments that exes want to have about, you need to make sure they do their homework when the kids are struggling to do their homework. I don't agree with that. I think that if you want to get them to do their homework, you can do that. And if I have decided to have a more relaxed approach, I will do this. So what we do, parallel parenting is like parallel parking. You don't get out and move the other car in order to park your car. What you do is you create a space round and you park your own car. Correct parallel parenting should be not arguing. It's simply, this is the way I do it. I don't agree with that, so I won't be doing it that way. And that's all the way that you stay it. It's really calm. I do it this way. Now, say that you're guilt tripped, well, Dad always says I can have donuts before dinner. Well, I don't agree with that. I believe in having donuts after dinner, so that's how we'll be doing it here. I just don't agree. We don't have to say what we don't agree with or why we don't agree, or give a big rationalization why there's such a this, that, and the other. We just say, I don't agree. I do it this way. They do it that way. That's the end of that. That is my top short tip. Okay. I just disagree is an underused phrase. I don't agree. I think this.
That's really, really good tip. And I guess
Mm.
following on from that, if you would like more tips or more support, then we will be sending everyone's information on this call afterwards. So Eve's details, the details to Nevine's amazing app, Playdate as well. And then, of course, if you have a tween or a teen who might also need an additional resource, then we'll also send some information about Luna. So thank you all so, so much.
Thank you so much, Eve. Thank you, Jas. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you as well. It's been a really interesting and important discussion to just hear these views. And again, I just want to congratulate the pair of you on your apps. It's so lovely for me in the work that I do to see people who are out there really thinking so compassionately and carefully about how to actually deliver these services. Brilliant. So thank you very much.